Good morning, and welcome to another continuing medical education brought to you by the Department of Continuing Medical Education at the Princess Margaret Hospital. I am so excited for this morning's presentation. We're doing something a little bit different this morning, and I'm sure it's going to be very beneficial to all of us who are in attendance. So before we start, as we usually do, we're just going to say a quick word of prayer. Father God in heaven, we come before you this morning, thanking you for another beautiful day. We have so much to be thankful for. We are about to go into another session to enrich our minds so that we can improve ourselves, and an improved self will help us to provide improved care for the patients that we serve. We pray that you will be with this session, oh God, and that we will learn from the speaker. This I pray in Jesus' name, amen. So again, we are about to get into an exciting presentation. We have a guest speaker with us today, and I am happy to introduce her to you. So today, our speaker is Dr. SUSANA Bowling. She is the director of the Neuroscience Institute at Summa Health System since 2015 and the stroke program since 2008. She holds 2 medical degrees, one from Spain and one from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and is triple board certified in neurology, neurocritical care, and vascular neurology. She has received designations as Fellow of the AHA, the NCCS, and most recently, Fellow of the American Academy of Neurology. She had held several leadership positions throughout her career, but one of the positions that has been closest to her heart was chairing the WINCC, which stands for Women in Neurocritical Care Committee, which sparked her interest in support and leadership training to women. She has held several leadership training in the field of healthcare. She is now a member of the practice committee and the leadership subcommittee of the AAN, where she strives to continue to apply her influence and also learn from experience. So please welcome Dr. SUSANA Bowling, who will be presenting today on From Physician to Leader, using emotional and conversational intelligence. Dr. Bowling?
Thank you very much for that very impressive introduction. Thank you. I would like to see if I can share my slides. I wasn't sure if I can do that. Oh, yep, there it is. Perfect. Okay, good. So hopefully everybody can see my slides. It's not always the case. Sometimes I have problems with the slides. And thank you very much for this invitation. I had to say I enjoy so much talking about this subject because I believe that as a physicians, we are leaders from day one, but we get very little training on what leadership means and what leadership is. I tend to give this lecture in the form of 3 hours workshop. So we're going to kind of sum it up with a little less interaction between us, but we'll just so you know, we go through 5 parts that I recommend you actually do even later on when I'm not here, that includes some exercises of, conversation among yourselves, as well as listening among yourselves, and also, looking through some movies and looking through some or listening to some music. So first of all, I would like to give you 2 minutes more, because I know we only have 45 minutes, to look, just think about a word, even if you come out with 1 or 2 words that for you means leadership. And then I'll move on and tell you what I found about that. Okay. So 2 minutes about thinking of what means leadership. And if you want to write them in the site, just so people can listen to your mind, welcome to do that. In a regular interaction, I would like to hear what you think, but this is a little more complex to be assuming. And it's interesting how we never stop to think about what leadership means, right? And it means something different for everybody. If you look at what Eisenhower said, that's something that is very controversial right now. He said leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something that you want them to do for you or for something else because he or she wants to do it. Of course, I added the she because back then the she was never in the mind of leadership. But the bottom line, this was a definition that implied a little more of almost a controlling, you get somebody to do something that you want. But I don't think leadership is about control. That's something that initially I was grown into that concept by the leaders I initially had. And I am so much more taken by the most, I wouldn't call it modern, but more realistic and more real concept of leadership. That is the ability for an individual, and that means you are a leader of yourself. Before you can be a leader of anybody else, you have to be a leader for yourself. So is the ability for an individual or a group of individuals to influence and guide, because not only you are a leader as an individual, but you can have a team that leads other teams. So it's not so limited as one single individual. Yeah? And you allow to guide and followers. So you influence, you guide, and other members of other organizations to successfully achieve a defined goal. And this definition is just a summation of understanding that you cannot lead anybody without having a goal to lead for, right? And then that goal needs to benefit everybody. So again, it's not a singular individual that is a leader. It could be everybody a leader, a team leadership. You have to be leader yourself. You don't control anybody. You have to influence and guide. And then you have to have a goal. Without a goal, you can lead anybody. If you get in a car to go somewhere, you don't know where you're going. You can't get there, right? So that's the same. And then you have to not only define the goal, but also to have a goal that benefits everybody. So everybody has an interest. One of the most recent things that had happened in the world that have impressed me to no end. I don't know if you'd heard that in Spain there was these horrible water floods that inundated a whole town in the east side of Spain called Valencia. And the government wasn't doing anything. Not surprising, right? And the population just got together with one single aim. Let's go and help the people in Valencia. So we have 45,000 people that came from all over Spain and some from Europe and some from the United States and other parts of the world, just with the intention of showing up and helping take water out of the streets. No one told them to do it. So why did they do it? So first of all, they had a purpose, and that's the concept of motivation. You want to lead individuals, influence individuals. You have to give them a goal, but then also you have to understand what motivated these individuals. The most interesting thing is that you have what is called the internal motivations. Those are your personal motivators, and then the outside motivations. The majority of these 45,000 volunteers were young people, which was something very unique. They have a motivation that was very common to them. It is to have a presence and a reason or something to be proud of, and that entrepreneurial desire to help, which was surprising for everybody because everybody always said, youth is this, and it was really a call for attention to the youth of how they want to be there, right? But motivation, think about what motivates you. Think about what motivates the people you are with, what motivates your patients, when you are talking to them about doing something. So motivation is a way to lead the conversation so you can influence them. So clear motivations have always been passion. Through passion, we have got so many things through the history of the world, right? But you have to also believe, the belief that you can do it is very, very important, and the existence of purpose. So you think about it, these individuals were passionate about help and make a difference. They believe they could do it, and they have a clear purpose, when they went to Valencia, What are acts of leadership? And those are the things that you might have written in your paper. Obviously, we talk about influencing, guiding, driving, inspiring, motivating. All these are going to be words that are going to come over and over that we never think about, but we don't have to. But you sometimes also have to create that vision. And that's the most difficult part, because the vision has to be something that not only benefits the team, it can be achievable. And then you have to have a strategy of how to get to the vision. And then beyond that, you have to have those little intermittent steps so people knows that maybe the vision is a 3 years vision, but you can't have people waiting for the 3 years to see that they have achieved something. People wants to achieve things immediately. So what are those little steps along the way, the overall vision that allows the individuals not to lose faith in the fact that they can get there, that belief, that passion, and that drive, that maintains through the process. So a leader has to do that. That's the case with your patients. You want to achieve a better control of blood sugars. Well, it doesn't mean you need to get an hemoglobin A1C of 5.5 today, but maybe you have a realistic vision that you can get there in 5 months from now, 6 months from now, and you can celebrate every little step that the patient achieve, from stop eating cake to finally getting to the 5.5, right? You had to define, you had to be able to keep the boat in the same direction over time and react to crisis when crisis occurred, right? When something happens that makes you shift the direction of the boat or change a little bit of vision for the benefit of the whole, right? So when we look at the competencies of leaders, that's a slide you're going to see twice, because as preparing the lecture and looking and researching, I realized that when you look at competencies of leadership, you're really talking about emotional intelligence, which is the self-awareness, the self-leadership, the awareness of others, and then how do you master that relationship with these others? How do you communicate? How do you listen? How you empathize with others, So all these qualities, and some of the ones already mentioned, that are qualities of a leader. And you noted that as a self-awareness, I'm putting the brain, heart, and gut, And this is another concept we're going to talk through the lecture about. Self-awareness means awareness of our physical state, our emotional state, and also our heart and our brain. So how is our brain? And you'll notice that in a situation of stress, you have a feeling that is physical, right? So you're going to feel that. You're going to know where the state of or the tone of your brain is under or through which you're going to filter all your thinking, and that's influenced by your fears and your heart. And we're going to talk more about that. And that's crucial because as a leader, you have to have constant understanding of where those three brains are at any point when you converse, when you make decisions, when you make plannings, all that is very important. So the perfect leader, to me, you have it in the picture, is somebody who obviously has to be intelligent, right? And that has to be a diplomat. And I just highlighted some of those characteristics of a perfect leader. The humbleness is important. It has to be charismatic, because that sometimes is what's going to get people to believe in that person. The charisma, it has to be confident, because in a moment of crisis, when the leader doesn't believe, the team doesn't believe. And even when the leader doesn't say he doesn't believe, there is that ability for the team to know and connect through those mirror neurons that we have with the tone of the mind and the belief of the leader. So the leader needs to be confident, has to have energy, has the ability, the positive thinking. And we're going to talk about the concept of positive thinking many, many, many times. There is a book that was written in the last century, early last century, that is called Success Through Positive Mental Attitude. And that's the name of the book. When you read it, it's a little obsolete because obviously this was in the early 1900s. But the key of success, of the 17 rules of success, the number one rule is that of having positive mental attitude. And you know that if you're a critical care physician, if you don't think your patient is going to make it, you're not going to make it. That's one thing where we always talk to the palliative services. If you start driving the world in the belief that the patient is not going to have a good option, solution or a good outcome, then that self-fulfilled prophecy comes from that feeling that you do not feel that things are going to get positive. Well, you have to believe that it's going to be positive, not believe just fakely, but you have to know that the patient is going to get better. I put the picture of my CEO because at one point in time, a hospital was about to disappear. In 1970s, we have a 17, excuse me, in 2017, we had a terrible crisis. The hospital, literally, physicians were leaving, the economy was horrible. The main leader was decapitated because of his poor leadership. And then this gentleman came through, and a boat that was literally sinking, like a Titanic, very, very quickly, he was able to turn it around very quickly. And he came with all those characteristics. He was very humble. He was confident he could do it. He communicated very well his plans, and he brought the people to believe and think. When I asked him the first time I prepared this lecture, I actually emailed him and said, could you tell me what you think are the characteristics of a leader? And believe it or not, this was like a midnight on a Saturday night. I was in a different state, actually, preparing the lecture. And he responded immediately and said, being a leader is being true to the mission, passion for what you do, developing trust and relationship. That's super, super, super important. And we'll talk about that also through this lecture. Have transparency. The word trust comes with a T. That T is a T for transparency. Humbleness, always doing what you think is right for the patient and community. And of course, he talked to us as a leader of a hospital, right? And then accountability. We don't understand how important it is to go through our word. If we say as a leader, we're going to do something, we need to be present, something that's sometimes very difficult for a leader. For me, it's very, very difficult. But unfortunately, accountability is also what will make or destroy a leader. So one of the most important understanding is that the success of a leader is the success of the team. It's no longer the leader getting to the top. If their team is not getting to the top, the leader is not making it to the top. So as a leader, you need to think about your team being the one that gets to the top and holds that flag, and that's the way the team grows with you. So there are theories about who can be a leader. And in the past, obviously, the great men theory never thought about women being a leader, right? That's obviously obsolete. The idea that you were born like that you have it in the genes, that you have that particular characteristic or trait that makes you a leader, Then the ones that are the right leader in the right scenario, you're not leader for everything, but for this particular scenario, you could be a leader, And then you have the new concept. The fact is that everybody can be a leader. And just like anything, just like you can be trained to do anything right, you through neuroplasticity, you can become a leader. As you know, Tiger Woods is an extraordinary golfer. I bet he wasn't born like that. He didn't have traits. He just simply trained over and over and over and over and over and over and more over. And that means that repetitive, intentional, and focused actions that are taken helps you develop skills, the skills of cooking, the skills of playing golf, the skills of thinking as a team, the skills of planning, the skills of drawing. So everything can be done through leadership. And this is an extraordinary slides that one of my Dr. Sendejas, who works in our department, did for me, with the idea that you can see how the more you create pathways, and pathways are created every time you have a thought process. The more you do that, the more you then strengthen those pathways. And a person that is a painter will strengthen the pathways in one part of the brain. A mathematician will have other pathways. A lawyer will have other pathways. If you put an individual on the table with a specific background, and you put a problem in front of them, they would all resolve the problem in a different way that you may not understand. It may not make sense to you because your pathways are not the same, right? But this is one of the concept of knowing you can develop the skills that it takes to be a leader, you know? So neuroplasticity and the concept of is it right brain or your left brain? Now, I have a husband that is incredibly left brain, and I am a painter, you know? The behind is one of my paintings. So he never thought of himself as an artist, totally left brain. Yet one day he got a camera, actually stole my camera, and started taking photographs. And now he makes the most beautiful photographs with the most artistic ideas that you could think of. Over a period of time, he trained his right brain. So don't ever think that you're either right brain or left brain. You can actually develop every portion of your brain. So as you know, the famous movie and Gusto, what you know, and the truth is that everybody can cook, right? So the key concepts from the moment you are born, you are building pathways, and a lot of those pathways are related to the experiences you have and the training that you have, right? Sometimes to learn, you need to forget. That means you need to stop using some pathways that are not working for you, like stubbornness or selfishness, right? And start building pathways that makes you more successful in whatever it is that you do, but particularly as a leader, because we are leaders in everything we do. To do that, you need to think about what pathway you want to strengthen, and you need to start doing focus activities in that regards, okay? And collect and create new cognitive habits. One of the things we're going to talk about is the cognitive habits that have to do with communication and speech. You know, how we start a conversation, how we listen to a conversation, how do we address an issue around us. Okay? Now, as physicians, we're horrible leaders only for one reason, because we are very good leaders to ourselves, sometimes, not always, but we have been trained, our pathways have been trained to think of success as an individual success. And even though we're very empathetic with our patients, we tend to be very poorly empathetic with the people that are around us. For example, when you're in a school, you want to be the best. You have to be the best because otherwise you cannot be accepted into medical school. When you're in medical school, you want to be the best. You have to be the best because otherwise you can be accepted in the program that you want to be accepted for. What that means, being the best, is that you want your colleagues and your people around you not to be better than you. And therefore, your leadership, your goal is yours only, right? So when you go on to be in a team as a leader, then you have to shift those thought process. You can't be no longer thinking about your own success. So that competitive thoughts, that being the first, being the one that is here, you need to forget those learnings and shift them and change the me for the we, which is important. I just talked to you about how it's important or how the difference of how to solve a problem in somebody who may have had a different training. That is the key component of the power of diversity. When you have different people at your table, that may have different backgrounds, and you can, just think of in different scenarios, who can you put on the table that can bring new ideas, then you can realize how their pathways are going to solve a problem in a way you never would think of. So when somebody tells you a solution, instead of thinking that makes no sense, then try to understand their sense, because it may make more sense that you understand, based on their pathways in the way they're solving the problem. Okay. And we're going to talk about this brain, heart, and guts. And there's no question in my mind that in order to be successful as a leader, you really need to listen to your brain, to your heart, and your mind. We are very brainy, right? Physicians and individuals with high level function are very brainy. We're gonna dissect everything from trying to understand it from a logic standpoint. But what we don't understand is that what predominates in a circumstance is almost always an emotion, So when you get into a crisis, there is an emotion in the room. You have to understand that emotion in order to control that emotion, not only yours, but in the patient and people around you. So if we were seeing each other, I would ask you to lift your hands and tell me who can't share what is their emotions that they have when they are in a scenario in which they feel fear. For example, I can share mine. When I feel fearful, my heart that goes up, my ears get hot, And once you understand your emotion, then you can also understand what triggers that emotion. To me, when somebody's mad at me, I get that. For whatever reason, I'm a pacifier. I like people to be happy. So when somebody's angry, then I get that emotion. Then I know when I have that emotion, how I react. So once I learn those triggers and also my behavior and how my reaction was to the emotion, I then started thinking, is my reaction appropriate? Yes, no. And how can I control it? So when I start feeling that sensation, I stop. Then I actually try to see the scenario. And if I'm not going to be able or ready to address the issue in that moment, I may actually court divert smartly the conversation to a time when my emotion is not controlling my behavior, So that's very, very, very important. So that comes from our brain, obviously. We are no different than a reptile. So the reptilian brain, which is one of the first evolution brains, which is the area what we will call the gut brain, is the area that keep us alive. Is the area that make us want to survive and therefore reacts with the intention of protecting you, right? Or protecting self. And it works as any animals, a cat, or actually cats sometimes are more smart than we are, but any animal is going to react to a sensation that is either visual, smell, hearing, touch, in an action that will make you survive. And is the first one that when interacting with individuals is going to make you think that the individual that you're interacting with is a foe or a friend. So that's the reptilian brain, and it acts in a millimicrosecond. When you put your finger in the fire, how long does it take for you to remove your arm from the fire? It takes you a microsecond, less than that. That's your reptilian brain acting on you. You don't have to use your brain to think, oh my God, my finger is burning, I had to remove it from the fire. So that's how fast your brain is thinking, and that thought process of fast action you can control, right? So you have to learn what makes your reptilian brain then lead to a connection with an emotion. So the limbic system, which is going to be the heart, it's going to be the one then that's going to start triggering hormones that are going to completely set up the tone of the brain and how the brain is going to respond in a happy way or in an angry way, in a fearful way. So the rational brain, the forebrain, has not even been connected here or activated before you already have a reaction and before you have a feeling about the situation. So what that means is that all what you think your cognitive skills and how smart you are is going to be decapitated, because at that point, your smartness is no longer working. It's your reptilian brain and your emotional brain, the one is acting. And this is not about women, this is about the humans in general, right? So our cognition, language, and areas of forebrain, there's an actual decrease in cerebral blood flow to the forebrain in those scenarios, triggered by the neuropeptides. And what that's going to do is going to make you not think. It's going to make you run. So the parietal regions, the areas of sensation, motor actions that makes you run are going to get better flow, but the frontal lobe is going to decrease the flow. So cerebellum, all those areas are going to get better flow because the idea is run, fight or flight, right? However, if the reptilian brain is controlled, and if the reptilian brain is happy, and then is identify the situation as a happy situation, then the forebrain is going to get better flow, and a situation that in which you feel comfortable is where your forebrain is going to be best utilized. At that point, you can think, have the planning, the evaluation of risk and benefits, where the forebrain finally is working, and that takes time before that happens. So this is me just about a week ago with one of these nice little iguanas. And just I took that picture to put in the slides to say, we are not much different than an iguana from the standpoint of trying to run away. And one of the questions I have is how many people have ever evaluated their emotional intelligence? And what is emotional intelligence? So now we're talking about the brain as a heart, guts, and thinking brain. But then we also have to think about emotional intelligence. What does that mean, And it has really nothing to do with emotions in a way, right? It has to be with understanding the perception of scenarios, yourself, your others, and communication. So it's a series of tools. There's two different forms of two evolution of emotional intelligence, from the very first one that was defined to what I think is more up to date, is the EQI 2.0, in which not only is about perceiving yourself, it's also about developing, maintaining the social relationships, cope with challenges, and then use the information that you have to make decisions, that it depleted of emotional drive. So have that control scenario of your gut and your heart, and then have decisions made using primarily your forehead, right? And then have self-awareness. So this is a series of tools that you have in or apps that you have in your brain, just like you have apps in your phone, right? There's a big difference between the EQ and the IQ. An IQ you're born with, the EQ you develop. So just like we said that you can develop pathways on leadership, you can develop pathway to strengthen your emotional intelligence. And that's the beautiful thing about it. So identifying and understanding your emotional intelligence, then it would allow you to be able to see what areas of your emotional intelligence are not working for you, and what areas you can then work on and develop behavioral habits that gets you to success. So what are those areas of emotional intelligence? You can, by Daniel Goldman, who first talked about emotional intelligence in 1995, define four areas of emotional intelligence. One is self-awareness, then the self-management, the social awareness, and the social skills. Now, by the way, I love this picture of this bird. Competencies of leadership. I told you I was going to show you these slides again. Just look at how similar this is. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social skills with the competencies of leadership, self-awareness, self-leadership, awareness on others, communications, which implies social skills, right? Now, the 5 components of EQ 1.2.0 is a little bit more expanded from that. One is a self-perception. So how do you see yourself? Self-expression. How do you express yourself? How do you relate to others, which for that obviously imply your understanding of the situation of the others. How do you make decisions? And then how do you control your stress? So, oh, I didn't know that this was like that. Change that. So this is the EQ 2.1. Now, understanding emotional intelligence is not good or bad. You just have a number, right? And as you can see, there are at least these composed of like the self-perception, self-expression, the interpersonal connection, making decisions competency, and the stress management. And each one of them have a subcompose that that defines that particular characteristic. So how you regard yourself, how you optimize your knowledge, so each one I will go with them in detail. At the end of the day, the summation of all gives you a number. 130 would be the highest number. And you would think, obviously, higher emotionally intelligent measurements have been associated with bigger success. But there's not a good or bad, because there are some components of emotional intelligence that wouldn't work for everybody. For example, if somebody is a debt collector and one of the components on the interpersonal relationship, they have very high empathy, then that person is going to be completely a disaster in their job, because they're never going to be able to collect, right? So there are components of emotional intelligence that work best for specific uh, scenarios of what you do in life or what you hope to do in life. So again, there's the overall composed and the different 15 subscales. Now, the other thing is very interesting is that they relate to each other. So when you have an evaluation of your emotional intelligence, each one of your characteristics are going to be measured against the others and try to balance yourself, right? For example, if you happen to be somebody who is very impulsive, so at the compose of decision making, you have impulsivity of that. And at the same time, you are somebody who does not do reality check. That means that you don't really see what is around you before you make a decision. You understand you're going to be a horrible decision maker, right? If you are somebody who, in the interpersonal state, you are very dependent on others, and at the same time, in your decision-making compose, you are somebody who is all the opposite to impulsivity, then you are not impulsive and depends on others, you're never going to be able to make a decision. So all these inter skills relate to each other, and the relationship gives you also an assumed type of problems that will happen with you when you have that kind of pattern. So it's super important to have an EQ evaluation and then understand yourself. And then it's amazing when I do some coaching to individuals through their EQ, how they see the reasoning of the brain starts working, understanding why they do what they do and what the problems that they face, and I could talk about this forever, but for interest of time, we'll move on for some more. But in this slide, you can see how every component of emotional intelligence relate to each other, and they are all interrelated in a way that optimize success. So if you have a good self-perception and you have a good self-expression, then your interpersonal relationship is also going to be improve. When you have self-perception, expression, interpersonal relationship better, you'll have a better way of making decisions. And if you have better way to make decisions and more confident about your decisions, your stress will be automatically low. So you can see how everything is interrelated. So let's go down more detail of each one of these compose. You have first self-regard, and then self-perception, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. We talked already a little bit about emotional self-awareness, how to listen to your body, kind of thinking and knowing how that affects your behavior. Self-regards and self-actualization means that you first need to understand what you do well and what you do bad. If you're somebody who doesn't like or doesn't know how to go skiing, right? You shouldn't go and sign up for a ski trip with your friends, right? Now, your emotional self-awareness is going to be, okay, that's going to make me sad because all my friends are going skiing, but I don't know how to ski, and therefore I'm not going to go with them the trip. I can get very sad about that. However, your self-actualization is going to say, well, I recognize I don't know how to ski. I recognize that I shouldn't get involved into actions in which I'm not good at, in this case, skiing. But guess what? I can learn. So my friends are going to go skiing a year from now, I'm going to take lessons for the next year and see if eventually a year from now I can go skiing. So this is a concept of understand what you do well, understand what you do bad. Don't beat yourself for not doing well the things you don't do well. Very important. Don't beat yourself. Then determine what things you don't do well are worth investing into improving, and then go after those things and get better, right? And at the same time, the things that you do well, recognize what you do well, and get involved into actions and activities that are going to give you success because you know you're good at it, right? So that's very important in leadership. You can think self-expression, love yourself. So your emotional expression, assertiveness, and independence are, and we're gonna go down into this a little bit more as well. And I just want to give you an example with that. The emotional self-expression means, making the right statement in the right way, in the right place when it is important for you, for the other individuals to know how you feel at the moment, without a component of emotion, right? So assertiveness, for example, is felt to be a bad thing. It has a bad connotation, but it's not. Assertiveness means that you are going to express and to go after things that you think you want, or that is good for you, or that protects you, right? Because if you don't, no one is going to know that you are expressing yourself and you are assertive about that. I'm going to give you an example that is very clear. My mother-in-law, who is actually upstairs right now, she's visiting right now, is an amazing woman, and she came with me to Spain one time. She speaks no Spanish, and she went to wanting to visit my parents and get them some cakes. So she went to a phenomenal store with the most amazing cakes, and there were specific cakes she wanted. They only have three. She wanted two. One of the cakes was broken, right? So she was little lady at the time. She's even more little lady right now. And the gentleman that was serving her saw that she was an American, I guess, and decided of the three cakes, one was broken and two was not, he was going to give her the broken cake. So he gave her a good cake and a broken cake, thinking, well, she's not going to complain. She's a little lady and she doesn't speak Spanish. I'm going to give her the broken cake. My God, she did the wrong thing. She stood for herself and very clearly let him know that she wanted the good cakes, and got another gentleman from Spain to help her, because I wasn't even with her in the store, to help her convince the other guy how shameless it was for him to give her the bad cake. So the bottom line is that that's a sign of assertiveness. When it's right for you, speak up, because no one will know what you want, or no one will know what you're thinking. Another component of emotional intelligence is interpersonal relationship. And I had a picture of my brother. I don't know if anybody who is best with the relationship that my brother has 1,000 million friends. And this picture just showed you how he can sell you a donut as the best thing for breakfast, because it's the only thing he had for breakfast that day. So interpersonal relationship is important to understand as a way to maintain equilibrium, where one thing I learned is that every relationship, in order to be long-lasting and in order to be quality, needs to have an equilibrium between the two individuals that are part, or the two scenarios, two institutions, two whatever you want to put in those two components of a relationship, needs to have an equilibrium of give and take. If not, the relationships don't last. Empathy is important and is a key element of leadership, because every time you address any problem, one of the important things in any difficult conversation is to put yourself in the shoes of the other person and try to see the scenario from the other person's side, and then be empathetic about what are they feeling and seeing and what their world looks like in order to understanding, and they have that social responsibility. On the decision making and problem solving, we talk about the impulsivity. So are you somebody who takes forever to make a decision, or are you somebody who takes a decision very quickly? There's a pro and con with each one of those components. Reality testing, meaning before you make a decision, understand and do the due diligence to understand what is the stake of the decision. And then that impulse control we already talked. And then the stress management. How flexible are you with change? One of the things that you know once in life is that life changes. You have a plan and then something happens and you have to adapt. You go on a trip with your car, the tire breaks. You were thinking about arriving at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now you're gonna arrive at 6 p.m. These things are gonna happen because you're not gonna be there on time. So flexibility, having a mind that can adapt to changes is important. And how to adapt to change is something that also we need to train our brain. You'll know as you go through life, there are people that don't like change, and there are people who can change and don't think this is a big deal. That's how the brain is working and how the brain adapt to change because they have never been exposed to change. So in order for you to feel comfortable with change, you need to change, 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 change. So for somebody, for example, like me, that I changed languages, I changed countries, I changed families, I changed, my husband was in the military, I moved 15 times. Change has become a part of my life. So I feel comfortable with change. But I have to be empathetic when I lead into individuals that I know they haven't had that exposure to change, and therefore for them change is difficult, right? But knowing change, how to change is a way to control your stress and to maintain that optimism. So what's most important for a physician in the emotional intelligence compose is obviously be empathetic. But what's most important as a leader is going to be the emotional self-awareness, being assertive, having that interpersonal relationship, and the ability to problem solving, and the highlighted elements of emotional intelligence that is most important as a leader. And then your own leadership, when you build your own leadership, which you need to before you can ever be a leader, is starting with understanding your self-perception, actualize yourself and those things that you're not good at, and be good about your self-expression, controlling your emotions. Just so you know, having a good emotional intelligence is the pathway for well-being and happiness. People that are not happy at work, people that are not happy in circumstances, they have it in themselves to be happy. Not that our circumstances are not happy, but and makes you anger, right? But the scenario, how you address them, how you cope with them, how you internalize them, has to do a lot of the time with that self-regard, self-optimism, the interpersonal relationships that allows you to create a backbone that helps you withstand the changes and the stresses and the scenarios that are bad in whatever work or home. Okay, and then the ability to self-actualize is very important. I'm going to move very quickly because I know you have time to converse about the conversational intelligence. And I'm going to summarize in the fact that everything we do comes from conversation. Everything happens through communication. And if you learn to understand that communication and words, discussions is not an exchange of information, but an exchange of emotions, then you'll be successful in so many ways. So, let me move on. If we were together, I would play music and I would ask you to listen to the Four Seasons from Vivaldi. I suspect everybody recognized that music. And if you think about the music of spring of Vivaldi, you will see that that music will generate on you an emotion. If you shift that music and you start listening to the music of the Requiem of Mozart, and if no one has listened to that, I suggest you try this exercise, then you'll realize how unknown to you, your heart, your brain, your emotion is in a knot. So Vivaldi will make you happy, Requiem will make you despair. And then listen to the music of the movie Jaws. I don't know if anybody had seen that movie, but how it starts, you listen to that music, you realize that that is creating fear. So sounds without words alone can trigger emotions. I don't know if you have the habit of going to work and putting music in your car. Sometimes I do that. And if I'm going to have a bad meeting, I put a very happy music. Why? Because I want to get there happy. I want to set up the mood of my brain to be happy. right? So if music and sounds can have effects, what do you think words will do? Worlds meet worlds. So if I say the word beautiful, your lizard brain, your limbic system is gonna be happy. If I use a word that says disaster, your scary brain is gonna be scared and angry. So words means word. If I say the word house and I ask you to close your head and think about a house, everybody's going to have a different meaning for that house. And you need to also be mindful that some words mean something good for you, but some others may not. A person who has a bad upbringing in a house where there was alcohol abuse and maybe they were abused themselves, the word house may have a very negative connotation. So don't assume that your wording is the same as others, but there are some commonalities. So what that means is that when you're talking with somebody, imagine you have a student or a resident working with you and they did something wrong, and you tell them, you wasted your time on this. What were you thinking? You better come out and have an alternative result right away, right? That person is gonna feel like this little lizard scared. However, if you change the way you said that, and you said, you put much work into this, but I am not sure this is going to work in this scenario. Do you think you could come out with an alternative that will work better? So you can see those two sentences, how they can trigger different part of our brain. In one case, it triggers our fear, fight or flight response. Our forebrain is not going to get blood flow. Our frontal, a higher level of functions are going to be disabled. And therefore, I'm not going to be able to think of solutions. And I'm not going to be thinking of anything else but how to get out of the room and how to cry, right? However, in the second scenario, it's going to say, oh, yeah, well, let me think about it, right? Because you're not fearful. And your forebrain is going to be able to start thinking of solutions or where to utilize what you did. You're going to still feel proud because somebody thought you worked hard, recognizing what the efforts that you did. So that's very important. So the limbic system is the one is going to be together with the reptilian brain is going to be the one that is going to create cortisol, testosterone, adrenaline, noradrenaline, or oxytocin, dopamine, androgen, serotonin, and GABA. Those neuropeptides are going to be associated with different emotions and different effects. If I scare you, if I trigger the bad portion of your lizard, then you're going to have that effect on decreased flow to the neocortex, and you're going to have problems with memory, problems in even long term, right? The fight or flight response. While if I'm nurturing you, then you're going to have that sensation of satisfaction, motivation, positivity, and sense of decreased anxiety. That creates the element of trust, of distrust. And if you're trusting, then you'll be working with somebody. If you distrust somebody, you won't work with somebody. So we're getting to the 8:50. So just gonna finish with these levels of conversation, which kind of summarize this component, which is I call it the chicken dinner. So now imagine that you are coming to home and your spouse is telling you that we're gonna eat chicken. But you know what? You ate chicken today. You really don't want to eat chicken, but your spouse says you're eating chicken, and you're not gonna be very happy about that. Maybe you will eat it because he's telling you to do it, but you are not in the mood of eating. That's a level one conversation. I'm telling you what to do. I owned the control. Level two conversation is when you get home and your spouse is going to say, there's chicken left over from yesterday. You want to eat it, right? So the spouse is endorsing what that person, he or she wants, yet you are then making the selection. The control is in you. At the end, you may say, well, I ate this morning, but if you tell me there's some chicken in the refrigerator, let's just eat it so we don't waste it, right? You're still eating chicken, though, not very creative. However, what if a level three conversation comes in which you say, what do you want for dinner? What do you want to do for dinner? You may then come out with other ideas that has nothing to do with the chicken that make me more or better for everybody involved into the conversation. Okay? So traditional, positional, and transformative. So I'm gonna let it be in here because I know it was only 45 minutes. And in essence, I just want to share the fact that we can all be leaders. Take the time to understand your emotional intelligence. It's very important to understand how you think, how you behave, and how you act. then ensure that every conversation you have, you understand it not as exchange of information, but exchange of emotion. So when you think that you are sending your message through and you think you're very clear in your wording, be sure that you're so clear in the emotion you're triggering. And then build trust with the individuals around you by means of, humbleness and truth. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Bowling. That was indeed a wonderful presentation filled with a lot of information. And I personally have gained a lot from what you have shared. It will definitely cause me to have self-reflection and to test my emotional um, intelligence. I definitely look forward to that. We do have a question. I recognize Lauren. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was definitely very timely. I had attended a conference this week where they talked about emotional intelligence being a soft skill. And even if you look at different universities, like University of Berkeley, they actually offer courses on empathy and emotional intelligence at work. So it's definitely very timely. And Daniel Goleman, I realized that you mentioned that. I was actually reading that same book this week, and I noticed that he said that emotional intelligence is actually a better predictor of success than IQ. I just want to know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. That's what I mentioned in one of my slides. IQ. I mean, how many times people that are not quote that is smart. Right? One of the slides that I wasn't able to show is the ladder of assumptions. So sometimes the smarter you are, the more you create this ladder of assumptions. That means that you are not verifying your beliefs or understanding of a situation. And the smarter you are, the more complex that ladder is. So then you start believing the story that you have created when you don't know or you don't understand a circumstance. Let's say, for example, I'm just gonna give an example that your husband or your spouse comes through the door one day, all upset, and doesn't say hello to you, ignores you, and gets into the computer, starts working. That morning, you might have had a little bit of an argument with your spouse, and you think that he's still mad at you. So now there starts my ladder of assumption. I'm gonna start thinking, oh my God, my husband can't. He must still be mad for the stupid thing I said this morning. Well, why can he be so mad? And I am gonna be, you know what? I'm not gonna cook dinner for him, or I'm not gonna even say hello to him. I'm just gonna ignore him. Your husband, after the work in the computer, it comes out of the room, sees you watching TV, and you are acting just like that, not saying hello, no converting because you're mad because he was mad. He's still mad from the thing this morning. You're assuming that your behavior is not acting on your assumption. Okay? Yet that had nothing to do with it. He's upset because he just had a car accident and destroyed the front of his car. Came into the house upset and went quickly to the computer to communicate with the insurance company. Yet you are now behaving bad because your ladder of assumption is assuming that his behavior was still based on the discussion you had with him this morning, which is he's completely forgotten about, right? So the smarter you are, the more complex ladder of assumptions you have. And I gave you the silly example, but I can give you thousands of examples of very smart people that when I listen to them, I'm amazed. The brain is a meaning-making machine. If you don't understand something, you are going to give a meaning to that something you understand, but very seldom you do not stop to verify that meaning. That meaning that you're giving is going to be completely tinted by the emotion in which your brain is at the time. And that emotion is going to be based on emotional intelligence, how you understand the circumstances, how you understand the other person's circumstances, how you are understanding yourself and your reactions. And therefore, EQ emotional intelligence is definitely the thing that will allow you to be successful in life, more so than the IQ. So I don't know if that gives you an answer, but it's being proven, and it's been definitely, something that, unquestionably in my mind. And by the way, I give this lecture over a 3 hours session of workshops, which I think is significantly more effective, where we stop in each component and we talk about each one of the components and in an interactive way. I think a lecture is, it's okay, but it doesn't give you time to stop down and actually share and talk and test and do samples and activities that allows you to see that. Even looking at TV shows or movies, I have movie clips that allows you to see and identify what emotion was there at the time,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Over in the chat, we have some comments and we also have some questions. Dr. Sinkwi said, great presentation. Dr. Johnson also says, great presentation, and that he really enjoyed it. And he also wanted to know that if you had to pick a further beginner reference material for emotional intelligence in the workplace as a leader, what would you recommend for a beginner to read?
Actually, that's a phenomenal question. I would say the one thing I haven't got much into because we don't have time is a book on communicational intelligence, and that is of Judy Gassett. I think that's a book that must be read by anybody who is in a leadership position to understand, because it kind of encompasses that emotional intelligence with communication. And since everything happens through communication, as a leader, it taught me so much, right? There are books about emotional intelligence. There's one book I think is extraordinary too, in which I based some of the conversations here in the slides. It's called the Neuroscience of Leadership. And it goes in detail about that brain, gut, and heart. And it also gives you some exercises of how to identify it and what to do. So as you train yourself and you try to adapt, read the book and then go one by one, looking through, okay, this is what I want to train myself in the next few weeks of thinking or doing, or months sometimes, because it doesn't take just a week. But those are the two books I would strongly suggest to read, and they definitely helped me a lot. And that is Neuroscience of Leadership and Conversational Intelligence from Judy Gassett. I can't remember who wrote the first one, but I can send you the information.
Thank you so much. Dr. Robinson said, thank you for the additional information. It was thought-provoking, and I am looking forward to using these points as a part of my self-investment process. And Dr. Hannah says, thank you for an excellent presentation. Can you please summarize your suggested process for leaders to change the me to we? Can you also show the slide again on the levels of conversation?
So the things that we didn't have a time to talk about was this level of conversation, the transformative. I mean, I just barely introduced the concept of conversation. We didn't have much time to talk about it because, again, these are 3 hours lectures, right? So let me see. And if I can, so we talk about that transitional, positional, and transformative. And there are scenarios in which you can do transformative. Like if somebody's crashing in the ICU, you can't put up in the air, okay, what do you want to give this guy? Should we give dopamine or epinephrine? No, you gotta be transitional, right? There are scenarios where positional is important. But one thing I learned in leadership is that when I make a decision for a transitional decision without thinking first, if that should be positional or transformative, I always get in trouble. My team members get mad. And it takes for you just to stop every time of a decision and make it, okay, is it a me decision or is it a team decision? Should I just tell them what I think we should do? Or should I just open into discussion to see if somebody has a better idea than me, right? So that's kind of going back to the initial question, the we and the me. In order to change the we and the me, it's just simply thinking all the time, is it, for my team? Is this, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for my team? But having a clarity of the thought, right? In my mind, the priorities, and that's kind of like what your values are and where your priorities are, values and priorities, another activity that is important to do. So every decision I make goes to first, is it benefiting the patient? Is it for benefiting the patient? The second thing is it benefiting my team, right? And instead of my team, I use the word our team because that starts me, my versus our, they, we, right? So is this benefiting the patient? Is it for benefiting, our team? And then the third thing that becomes, is it benefiting me? Obviously, you don't want to hurt yourself either, right? But sometimes you have to make compromises. And sometimes you don't are the one who gets benefit. You get, for lack of a better term, screwed. But but that's the way you have to train yourself to think, right? And as far as, I mean, there's that ladder of assumptions, the fear beliefs, and the idea of your thoughts, your beliefs, your conclusions. And we don't realize how that ladder is built up by all these pre-existing understandings that we have, And quickly through, activities to do as a leader is when you converse with people, the concept of listening to connect. And that is how often do we stop what we're doing to look at the person who's talking to us, just stop typing, stop testing, stop everything, and just listened. And not only listen to the words, but also listening to their emotion. And I find myself sometimes tapping when they're talking to me, and then I just clap myself, stop what I'm doing, and look at them, and then try to see their emotion. And that's super important as a leader. I don't know if I answered the question, but that's again is in a short time is the best I get. Any other question?
Do we have any other question for Dr. Bowling? Okay, I see something just popped up. Dr. Hannah thanks you for your answer. Dr. Bain, great presentation. Thank you for the information. Informative and thought-provoking. Do you think an emotional intelligence course should be mandatory for leaders? That is, persons in management roles.
Absolutely. The answer is absolutely. We actually had that at Summa. I think that both a training on emotional intelligence and a training in conversational intelligence are actually considered core competencies in leadership structures in many hospitals in the United States already. Actually, those who have a leadership program for physicians, I had to say ours could do better than it does. It is also important to not limit only to the new leaders. There's a lot of programs for new leaderships when we don't understand that the leaders in place right now are the ones who need most of that training. But absolutely, it's important to have those two at the very minimum. You can use conversational intelligence or difficult conversations training. This is a little different approach, but very similar, as a mandatory competencies for leadership.
Hey, thank you. We have another question for you. Comment and a question. Excellent presentation. Do you have a link for online courses with you?
No, I don't, unfortunately. I got trained in emotional intelligence as a emotional intelligence because I'm a coach. So, by the way, there's one more little course that you should take as a absolute, which is personality assessments. But the easiest for leadership, because there are many different courses, is the DISH personality assessment, DIC, to understand the personality of the people that you work with, which helps you also understand how to talk to them and how to guide them or influence them. But so they are not, unfortunately not. When I got trained as a leader, I had to find through my own leadership training in the hospital what the suggestions were. And then as a coach, I decided to be trained as a actual emotional intelligent, somebody that actually does the evaluations, and I coach individuals through their results. But I don't know that I don't think that a course online is good, to tell you the truth. I think these courses are significantly more valuable as a workshop. And that's how they do that at Summa. They do a workshop on leadership of emotional intelligence. I think part of the course is bringing people to open themselves into conversations that may be difficult in an open environment, to make yourself vulnerable, and that, believe it or not, is painful but helpful. So I think that rather than a course, I mean, internet course, I would strongly consider doing more of a workshop.
Okay, thank you. Lauren is offering some additional information. Coursera has a course on empathy and emotional intelligence at work that is held by Berkeley University. So
Yeah, there's many courses out there. I just can't tell you specifically one because I got trained and I didn't do it through the internet.
okay, is there any more questions for Dr. Bowling?
By the way, one course that you can do, forgot about it. The American Society of Physicians Leaders, you can be a member of that. And within the American Society of Physician Leaders, they have multiple internet courses for training leaderships. And actually, you can get with a final certificate of that. I did several other courses, and they do have an emotional intelligence course there. I just didn't take that one because I already was certified. But now that I think about it, at American Society of Physician Leaders, you just had to become a member and then purchase their courses. And they have courses on accountability, accounting, not only just emotional intelligence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, so let's once again thank Dr. Bowling for taking time out of, I'm sure, very, very busy schedule to spend the morning with us, providing us with wonderful information. Thank you, Dr. Bowling.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
I also would like to thank you all participants for coming and participating in this morning's CME. I hope that you found it very useful and that you would be able to learn and share the information learned with our colleagues. Until next time, we will see you at our next CME, which is the second Wednesday of December. So have a great day.
Bye-bye.